I'm Barbara Peters. Welcome to this episode of the Criminal Calendar. We're indebted to the Los Angeles Times Book Fair for the presence of our author today, who flies in from Toronto, Peter Robinson. Hi, Peter.
Hello.
It's so good to see you.
Well, it's good to be back here again.
When was the last time we were together? Was it in your beachside home in Toronto?
No, I think I've been here since then. I think I was at the store a couple of years ago.
Aha.
But you've definitely been at the beachside home in Toronto.
You and I actually have met in all kinds of interesting places over the years.
All over the world.
Edgar, I was there the night that you finally, after your, I can't remember how many nominations for that distinguished award, won your Edgar.
Yeah, well, I'd been nominated a number of times for Best Novel and then finally got the award for Best Short Story.
Right, I remember that. I remember your wife Sheila going, because, we were getting up to it. Did you know it in advance? Do they tell authors?
No, they don't. No, they don't tell you. I mean, I thought if I say I'm not going or keep quiet about going, that I heard that they pester you to go, if you've won it. But nobody pestered me to go. I went anyway.
Well, you were kind of the Susan Lucci there of the Edgars for a while, weren't you? Seriously, hadn't she had like 6 or 7 nominations?
No, there weren't that many. I think 2 or 3. But I mean, if you've had a reasonably lengthy and reasonably successful career in writing, you're going to find that the perception is that you've won more awards than you have, and actually what you've done is you've had a lot of nominations, but you've lost the awards, and you get that very practiced smile,
Gracious in defeat kind of thing. Right. Well, I actually made a list. I went to your website, which is not peterrobinson.com, who turns out to be a successful lawyer, but peterrobinsonbooks.com.
He'd already taken that one, the sharp level.
So at peterrobinsonbooks.com, and they happen to mention that among all the awards that you have been shortlisted for, nominated for, or won, the John Creasy Award, which is now called something different. It's now called the something Dagger. What is it?
Have they taken the John Creasy out of it?
Right, they have. Now that they're doing the Crime Writers Association of Britain, as opposed to the Canadian, you call yours in Canada something different.
It's Crime Writers of Canada, and in Britain it's the Crime Writers Association.
That's it. Anyway, they've sponsored up with a bank, and in order to sort of bring everything into line, they have the Ian Fleming Steel Dagger for Best Thriller. They have the Gold Dagger for Best Novel. They eliminated the Silver Dagger, which I always thought was really...
It's a nice one, yeah.
Yeah. And instead of the John Creasy, who was the founder of that association and author of, 2,000 books under various names?
Something like that.
They now call it, I don't remember, something else, like First Dagger, First Fiction Dagger or something. But anyway, that. The Edgar, the Martin Beck Award, what's that?
That's the Swedish Crime Writers Association Award. Yeah.
Did you win?
I did, yes.
Wow, which book is that?
And in fact, it's one of those awards where they don't tell you you're on a short list, they just tell you if you've won or not. So I may have been on a short list other times, I don't know. They just award it to you. It's like the French one, like the Grand Prix de Littérature Policière. I knew nothing about it until my agent said, oh, you've just won this award. So I said, well, okay, how much money is it? Well, there isn't any money. Well, when do they send me to Paris to collect it? Well, there isn't actually any award. And I said, well, what is it? He says, well, it's the honour. And I thought, that's very French, isn't it? L'honneur.
How about the Swedes? Were they more concrete?
No, but they did send me a little medal and a certificate.
That's so interesting because Swedish crime has become an enormous success here in the United States. I mean, all of a sudden we're getting a vast array of imports who've won various awards in their native country that I didn't know about. The Martin Beck, and there's is it a Glass Key or something, or maybe that's the Norwegian one?
Yeah, maybe the Norwegian one. I've heard of that, yeah.
In fact, we are doing, I love this, we are doing a book event, The Poison Pen, at IKEA tomorrow at noon sharp with Håkan Nesser. Who has been brought over by the Swedish consul to do something here in Phoenix. And I thought, wow, that's really, an indication of just how popular Scandinavian literature has become.
Yeah, it certainly has. And in fact, though, one of the things that started me getting interested in crime fiction was Chauvel and Walou, and that's what the Martin Beck Award is named after, their detective. And there were just 10 books in that series, which I just loved. And then didn't hear very much from Scandinavia for a number of years. And then, of course, Henning Mankell became very famous. And now we have writers from Norway, from Iceland, from Sweden.
Absolutely.
All over the place. And it's a great climate for crime, I guess.
Even Denmark. I think Peter Hoeg, though, was the...
Smilla's Sense of Snow.
Smilla's Sense of Snow, which was hugely popular and was written about Greenland, which I think was a Danish colony for a long, or at least was under Danish governance for quite some time. Wasn't it Greenland? I think it's Greenland. Maybe I have that wrong. But in any case, you're right. And I'm just fascinated now. We have Karen Fossum, and I got an email today about some other new writer that I hadn't heard of, somebody named Alkoven, and just to react to them. But I can see why your books would appeal to them. Which book was it that won the Martin Beck?
It was In a Dry Season.
Which
Don't
in many
ask me
ways,
the Swedish title.
Well, no, I won't. I still remember In a Dry Season, and I still remember you saying to me in a worried way that Reg Hill had used essentially the same starting point.
The dried up reservoir in which something happens, yeah. But it held me off reading his book until mine was published. I just couldn't, which was terrible because I love Reg Hill's books. And then when I read it, I thought, it's completely different. And then we found that there are other books that use a kind of premise of a body being found under a dried up lake, for example, or a plane wreck being found, or so something that takes you back to the past, and that really in itself that's just a sort of device. It could be almost anything, just to take you back to another era.
It works extremely well, though, because among other things, it kind of preserves the crime scene. And I thought that wasn't there, in fact, a drought or something in England where a number of things had dried up?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was 1996, and obviously Reg must have gone to a dried up reservoir too, because you get ideas from places like that. And I went to one that was near Otley in Yorkshire, and it's a very eerie feeling knowing that this had once been a village, and that the village had kind of died after the war, and then they basically rehoused all the people who were left, knocked down most of the houses, and flooded it because it was in a good natural position for a reservoir. And of course, part of the great pleasure of In a Dry Season was imagining that place back to life, and all the people and the lives that were lived there.
There are villages off the English coast that have slid down the cliffs into the sea, and actually as global warming comes up, that may be a more frequent occurrence. Yeah,
there's actually a book called The Lost Villages of England, which I read when I was writing In a Dry Season. And it's quite fascinating. I mean, obviously the cliffside villages are a relatively obvious example because of erosion, and so sometimes you'll have on the east coast a west something, but there's no longer an east something because it's gone. But there are villages that have been emptied out by war, by famine, by any number of things. I guess sort of like ghost towns in some ways in western United States, but usually after a while, very few traces remain. I mean,
the Tennessee Valley Authority, when it did a great damming system in the 1930s, there were a number of things that went, under the reservoirs and all. And certainly China, the Three Gorges project on the Yangtze River has physically removed 1 million and more Chinese, I don't even know how many, from villages that are going under that project. So certainly not without precedent. But I did think it was fun that you and Reg came to the same thing in Yorkshire, which is, after all, not China.
Well, we thank Yorkshire Water.
Did that book, do you think, really sort of jack up your audience? The reason I ask is, I'm trying to remember who was talking at the store recently about whether one way to go is to write standalones, and another way to go is to take a series and constantly reinvent it and refresh it.